So as Susan mentioned, I'm Mark Kosters, and to my left is Andy Newton, and we're going to talk about a new project that we are working on. Nice, and my cell phone goes on here. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about a lookup service proposal that we are working on. So what is this? It's called Universal Whois, and what this has come from was that about a year ago, VeriSign was under negotiations with ICANN, and one of the portions of the agreement was talking about critical infrastructure, and that VeriSign was going to commit at least a certain amount of money towards internet infrastructure. I believe it's like $200 million. And one part of this was actually working on a concept they called Universal Whois, and that's a project that we've been tasked with helping formulate. So how are we doing this? Well, one of the things that we're doing is we're having 3 public consultations where these are open to anyone who wants to show up, and it's mainly for the policy people. We had the business and intellectual property holders in August 2000 at the U.S. Department of Commerce. There's going to be another session that's going to, I believe, going to be held at the ICANN meeting in L.A., and I believe this is going to be November 15th in the evening. This has not been fixed yet because ICANN's agenda hasn't been formally published yet, and we're waiting for that timing to actually come out so we can make sure that our meetings don't conflict with anyone else's. And then there's going to be another public consultation with the civil liberties groups and other non-governmental organizations, and that's probably going to be happening sometime at the end of November, probably in D.C. So, informal meetings. Well, we presented at RIPE. We're here now. I'm going to give a short talk at Aaron's meeting next week, and we may be speaking at Apricot in March. So what is this thing? Well, it's first of all, we envision it to be non-centralized. We also don't see it being specific to any particular TLD registry. So the fears hopefully will be somewhat mitigated, and this is not a VeriSign sort of centric sort of thing. And we also see this thing as being non-proprietary, open standards, and so on as an outcome. So what's our role here? Well, we're helping coordinate this. We're committed to actually have this happen, and we're here kind of in a listening mode since we're in a requirements phase. So this is kind of a part of a bigger picture, since whois is like a really old, very simple protocol that's actually very much broken. And people have seen this in the past, and there's been a number of efforts that have occurred. One was whois, another one is whois++, and the list goes on. And none of these have really taken off over the years, and it kind of died for a while, and now it's really come back. And there was a birds and feathers session at the last IETF called Whois Fix, where a number of these so-called requirements were started to be formulated in terms of how can we fix whois. And there hasn't been, after the meeting, there wasn't very much activity, so there's been very little email traffic on it. There's a bunch of email lists. One's IETF-whois@imc.org, and there's another one that's dealing with non-whois specific or issues, but dealing with whois-like data that we call IETF-not43. That's actually held by us. And the reason for that is as people start going down this line of looking at whois and the requirements, they may or may not realize, based on the requirements, that whois is not really appropriate for the task anymore. Right now, there's no inherent navigation capabilities, and for example, 10 years ago, this was not a big deal since everyone went to one site. I mean, there was the DDN NIC, and that has since morphed off to RIPE and the DDN NIC, then AP NIC, the DDN NIC, and also the AP NIC, Yeah, it's gone on, and now with all these new emerging TLDs, it's actually going to get to become a more of a mess, as well as the emerging regional internet registries that are also proposed to come online. So pretty soon this thing is going to be a really big mess. So it's time now to start looking at this and fixing it. So there's other issues, and they're dealing with policy and political sorts of things, and that's definitely not our role here. We're looking at from a technical requirements perspective and try to build something from there. So with that much to say, I'll give the rest of the talk to Andy.
Good morning. So traveling down the road of whois might not be the right thing, or who isn't. We started looking at other things to explore, and so we've come up with two projects. The first one we call the Referral LDAP service, which is based on LDAP, and it takes advantage of the LDAP standard. And the second one we call XDAP, which is an approach to do XML layering, very similar to what the EPP approach is in the IETF project group. Realistically, both of these projects actually started before VeriSign signed the Appendix W agreements with ICANN. So, the goals of these projects, we don't want to reinvent too much, trying to reuse as much technology as possible, which means we don't want to try to invent another application transport, and we don't want to try to invent another schema language. This is territory that's been covered plenty in the past, and there's no reason for us to recover it again. We do want structured queries and structured results for better machine readability, so people can easily write programs against these mechanisms. Referral to bridge the domain registries and registrars. So right now you have a lot of people trying to find domains, and they go to a registry, and then they have to go to a registrar to track down the contacts. Client authentication to address privacy concerns, and I should stress here that we are only looking to provide the mechanism, not the policy, as far as privacy and client authentication go. And then a set of toolkits so people can easily write programs against these services. So the Referral LDAP service uses LDAP to serve up domain information. We use LDAP because there's many server implementations. There's I think at least 10, and there are many tools and toolkits that you can write client software to use. Our implementation, our pilot project, we invented no new object classes, no new attributes, no new attribute syntaxes, or anything like that. So it's everything we have is already defined in an RFC or an internet draft somewhere. Works with LDAP v2 and v3. And here's the URL. If you want to go to their website, you can find background information on the project, as well as you can do a query against the servers, and it'll also tell you how to find the actual LDAP servers themselves. And we also outlined the DIT structure of how we did this in a draft which has been submitted to the IETF, draft Newton LDAP whois -01. Okay. What we have done so far with the Referral LDAP service is we have a registry LDAP server. It has 4 DITs for ComNet, org, and EDU, and a DIT for name servers. And we currently have over 32 million domains in there. We have a registrar DIT, also has the same 4 DITs, has a DIT for name servers and contacts, has referrals to registrants, and we have demonstration of access control there to show how you can use client authentication for privacy concerns. We have a website, as I mentioned before. Show you how to do example LDAP searches from a command line if you want. Also allows you to do queries right off the web pages. We also wrote an LDAP to whois gateway to demonstrate how you would maybe stand up one of these things in front of a current whois server, so kind of help people along to do this. It uses Open LDAP, and we open source the code for that. We have client code samples, and we also have 3 open source graphical clients, one for Windows, one for Linux, and then a Java-based one. XDAP, which is our XML project, is still currently in draft form, which means we haven't written much code beyond trying to verify that our thoughts are correct. The idea there is to use a layering approach, and to try not to invent too much. Similar to EPP in how we were approaching it, where we use XML namespaces for the extensibility and XML schema for the definition, so we're not creating a new schema language. And we're also going to monitor the ProvReg working group out of the IETF and see if we can reuse some of their some of their objects and their definitions. Again, it's multiple XML layers. You have a common schema for talking about commands and authentications, referrals, entity references, so forth. And then there are information-specific layers for refining the queries and the result set. And the goal there, again, is to be application transport agnostic, so probably layer it on top of SOAP or BEEP or whatever you want. Currently, we've concentrated on domains, since that's what we deal with mostly, but we are going to start looking into how you deal with RIR and IRR uses, and whether it's even appropriate for us to look there. We're going to be looking at common indexing for sharing indexes among different servers, and also more requirements gathering. So that's it. Is there any questions? You might want to.
About the ProvReg comment, I would say right now it would be a good idea to look at the ProvReg documents and see what you can make of them right now. We're in a good spot right now for comments that would see if we can use within ProvReg to help you guys do your job.
Okay. Yeah, I monitor the mailing list for ProvReg all the time, and I've been reading the drafts. So if you think it's in a pretty good stable point, then I guess now would be a good time for me to go through the objects in there.
Is there any plan to integrate lookup for the various integers that the registries allocate, IP addresses and ASs?
As far as LDAP is concerned, we are working with Eric Hall, who's actually going to release a draft pretty soon, on how to define AS numbers and IP addresses. Currently, if you look at the RFCs on this, the syntaxes aren't very good about how they describe the actual what an IP address looks like, and so he's working on this to try to solve that problem and to try to solve some of the query semantics that go along with them.
But that's an overall goal to integrate that data?
Well, it's not our data, so.
Actually, it is somewhat of a secondary goal for us is to actually take the registry data and put that in as well. And that's one of the reasons why we're talking at Wright and Apricot and also at Aaron. Because it's really a protocol that all of us use by accident of history, right? So this is something we'll try to integrate in if we can.
Right, I was just wondering when I could stop using, various super whoises, to get everything that I need to get, so.
Well, that's actually one of the problems with the centralized whois services. These guys go out, and since so many people use them, the access control that's at the endpoints actually gets enforced, and you may or may not get your answer based on their access control problems. Great.